Alright, so tonight I am seeking the tomes of Moon, Sun, and Temple. These are books found in the Fourthos dungeon underneath Hosidius, and they're part of the In Search of Knowledge miniquest. The In Search of Knowledge miniquest revolves around these books, and so I already started it. I'm in the middle of trying to complete it. And so what I've done so far is I went to Hosidius, I went to the Fourthos dungeon, and past a couple of webs I had to slash through, I found Brother Ameri, who's from Varlamore, but he's in Corrend. I think he's on like a mission or something. I actually just went up to him. I was following a quest guide, and I went up to him, and I just gave him food because it was in the quest guide. I didn't actually talk to him at first, but he's down there, I think, searching for knowledge, and I think he's a follower of Ralos in Varlamore. And so he asked me to find the tomes of Moon, Sun, and Temple. And so I went into a library that's in the Fourthos dungeon, and I searched the bookshelves, and I found these tomes. But if I go into my bank and I try to open them, let's see what happens. I can't read them. It says this tome is damaged and appears to be missing all of its pages. And that's the same for each of them. If I examine the Tome of the Sun, it says ancient literature detailing the religion of Ralos. And then examining the Tome of the Moon, ancient literature detailing the religion of Ranul. And then if I examine the Tome of the Temple, it says ancient literature detailing the existence of the Fourthos dungeon under Hosidius. So I'll learn about both of those Varlamorian gods if I am able to read the Tome of the Sun and the Tome of the Moon. And then if I fill up the Tome of the Temple, if I'm able to read that, then I'll learn about the dungeon itself where these books have been found. Now I can check each of them, and when I check them, they all say there are 4 pages missing. And so when you find these books, you can't read them because it says it's damaged and appears to be missing all of its pages. So you have to defeat monsters in the dungeon who have like the pages of these books on their drop table, and you have to find 4 pages for each book. And so the pages are generic. They're just called tattered sun page, tattered moon page, or I don't know what the other one is called because I haven't gotten any of those yet. I have 2 tattered moon pages and 2 tattered sun pages. So I think each one is generic to its book. It's just you need 4 of them for these generic book pages, but they're specific to each book. Anyway, and then I think you can use them on the book, and then go back to, and then I'm actually going to end up taking them somewhere else. I just looked ahead in a quest guide. But the way that I am searching for these pages is I am fighting Sarachnis in the spider lair in the Fourthos dungeon. And it's a drop rate of about, it's a drop rate of 1 in 5. And so I've done, I wonder what my kill count is. I've beaten Sarachnis 38 times, but I think I've only done maybe like 10 or 20 in this mini quest. I defeated Sarachnis about, I think, 25 times before starting this mini quest. So I'm going to continue. It's a drop rate of 1 in 5. I'm just going to continue working on that. And I will get back with you once I have all the pages and I'm ready to put them in the books. Okay, maybe an hour and a half later, I have the rest of the pages. Previously I had I think, just 4 pages, and now I have 12. 4 for each book. So the one I want to try to reconstruct first is the Tattered Temple tome, the Tome of the Temple with the Tattered Temple pages, and that's the one that says that it details the existence of the dungeon under Hosidius. So I'm going to use the Tattered Temple pages on the book. And it says, you add the final temple pages to the Tome of the Temple. Perhaps Lugosia would be interested in this. And Lugosia is someone in the Arceus library. And so I should probably take it over there when I'm done here. But first I'm going to read it. So this is called Tome of the Temple. And then when I open it up, the title is The Temple to Ranel and Bralos. Ritual Circle. The first room upon entering into the temple, a raised monolith with a joined symbol representing the union of both Ralos and Ranol. This monolith is used by both religions for delivering sermons and to preach about the practices of the religion. Meetings are held at the rise and fall of the sun or moon to celebrate their arrival and to pray for their return when they have left. Burial Tomb. A sacred tomb used to lay to rest the followers of either religion once they have passed, although common practice for followers of Ralos is to be cremated on the sacrificial burner. The care of this room is the responsibility of the followers of Ranol, but anyone may visit and pay respects to the fallen worshippers whenever they wish to. The library. Used to store religious texts and information considered valuable to both the worshippers of Ralos and Ranol. The care of this room is the responsibility of the followers of Ranol. Altar of the Sun. A sacred altar used by followers of Ralos for praying directly to Ralos. This altar only works for those whom Ralos deems worthy enough to receive his blessing. Crypt of the Moon. A crypt used by followers of Ranol to bury their significant leaders contains a stone relief depicting a vision of both Ralos and Ranol. Scorched Grotto. This area contains a number of baby red dragons which the followers of Ralos have been using to study these mythical creatures which are capable of manifesting a similar power to Ralos innately. It is the duty of the followers of Ralos to limit the reproduction of these creatures. Sacrificial Burner. A room containing a religious structure dedicated to Ralos, which is used to cremate the bodies of fallen red dragons in order to gain his favor. Members of Ralos also use this to cremate fellow worshippers, as doing so will unite them reunite them with Ralos in death. To anyone out there, I don't know. What should I do? They're insane. Ralos has fled to Varlamore in the south. The followers of Ranol have become too powerful. I tried to warn them against meeting with the Dark Wizard, but they wouldn't listen. I can already feel it. We've been corrupted, and my friends are becoming more fanatical and straying further from Ranol, corrupting his teachings and trying to force premature death onto others. I can feel it too. Part of me is slipping away slowly. Ranol, please forgive me. And that is the Tome of the Temple. I think it's interesting. Well, the section on the library talks about the room where I got the book from, so that's kind of cool. And I thought it was interesting when it talks about in the Scorched Grotto, that area contains baby red dragons, and the followers of Ralos have been using the room to study these creatures. And it says they are capable of manifesting a similar power to Ralos innately. And I think Ralos is the god of the sun. And so maybe they're talking about like the dragon breath as a similar power to the sun. But then the part of this section that I find really interesting is it says it's the duty of the followers of Ralos to limit the reproduction of these creatures. And I wonder why. Why would they have to do population control on the baby red dragons? Is it because, while they're studying them, they're interested in this capability to manifest the similar power that Ralos has, but it's also, maybe it's a threat, or maybe it's competitive, or at least a threat to Ralos' ego, or believed to be. I think it's really interesting there. Nothing else really jumped out to me, but that was the first book. All right, so we talked a lot about Ralos, so let's do the Tattered Sun, the Tome of the Sun next. And this, yep, it says Ancient Literature Detailing the Religion of Ralos. So I'm going to use the Tattered Sun pages on Tome of the Sun, and I'm going to read Tome of the Sun, and it says Teachings of Ralos. Origin of Ralos. The world was nothing and began when Ralos came into being, with a burst of glorious energy which provides us with heat, light, and from this, life. The power of the sun is rivaled by none. We are blessed to receive its glory during the day, and we lament that we are not worthy during the night. Praise the sun. Tenets of Ralos. We must strive to be like Ralos during our lives, to be bold, honest, bright, and brimming with positive energy, to seize opportunities, to regret not the past, and to live life to the fullest, to fully commit ourselves to our goals during the daylight hours, and then recuperate our lost energy during the night. Following Ralos, Part 1. To emulate Ralos is to spread your own positive energy to as many people as possible, to provide them with sustenance, support, and warmth both physically and emotionally. Ralos does so without regard for who they are or what they believe in, without discrimination, and so should we. Following Ralos, Part 2. As followers of Ralos, we must strive to work against those who would consume the world in darkness, those who would spread cold and negative emotions to others and harm their fellow man, for to do so is to become less human. However, do not hate your enemy, lest hatred become you. Instead, take pity on those who cannot see the light, and do your best to guide them towards it. And that's it. So this one's interesting. I think it's just the ending part there. I really was liking the talk of positivity. Where was that? Yeah, brimming with positive energy. That was in the Tenets of Ralos. But then it was saying in Following Ralos Part 2 that strive to work against those who would consume the world in darkness, those who would spread cold and negative emotions to others and harm their fellow people. And I like that it says work against instead of fight. Which seems in line with the positivity exemplified in the earlier pages of this belief system. Except it says, take pity on those who cannot see the light. And I don't know, I think it seems a little patronizing. Because in the previous page, Following Ralos Part 1, it says that Ralos provides sustenance, support, warmth, physically and emotionally, without regard for who people are or what they believe in, without discrimination. And the followers should as well. And so I feel like that's a little inconsistent with the idea of taking pity on those who cannot see the light. Yeah. I think pity implies that there's one right way, and implies this kind of superiority that that seems like a bit of a clash with the kind of positivity and supportiveness in the rest of this belief system. Anyway, so that's that book. The next one and the last one is Tome of the Moon. So I'm going to use, in this one, in the exam it says, The Religion of Renewal. So I'm going to use 4 tattered moon pages on that. And then I'm going to read Tome of the Moon. It says, Teachings of Renewal. Origin of renewal. From the dark of the night, with the absence of light, renewal came into being. Renewal bestows to those of us who are worthy both his guidance and his wisdom. While Rollo celebrates life, we instead turn to renewal, who teaches us to reflect upon life and the importance of death. Tenets of renewal. After life begins, the only other significant event is death. However, death should not be feared. Instead, it should be both embraced and respected. Death shapes us and those around us, as it is the final act of our lives, the final chapter of one's book. Following Renewal Part 1. As followers of Renewal, it is our duty to guide others in embracing death, to make sure that the life they lived is celebrated and the memories left behind impactful and meaningful to future generations. To ensure that those who are dead are respected and that their last rites are observed, we must treat them in death as they were in life, and as we too would expect to be treated ourselves once we pass. Following Renewal Part 2. Renewal brings light to the darkness and reveals the secrets that were hidden within. Renewal teaches us that we must explore and uncover the mysteries of the world, to present the knowledge that we find to others, but only as we see fit, as we should not reveal secrets that would cause harm to others. While the followers of Rollo speak with confidence and decisiveness, they are often reckless and impulsive. So that's speaking of Rollos. It is our duty to play the other side of the coin and question the reason and direction for their actions so as to predict and prevent the consequences of them. Yeah, I really like this. I think it's very humane to acknowledge the presence of death throughout our lives. It says after life begins, the only other significant event is death. I mean, that seems a little simplistic, but within that, I think there's a kind of it's kind of a compelling simplicity, that almost a freedom of considering everything that happens in between, something that doesn't need to be taken so seriously always, maybe. And how it talks about how death shapes us and those around us, as it's the final act of our lives. I think that's also humane to attune to how death, even when it hasn't arrived, is still acting on our lives and informing how we live them. Like it says, treat people in death as they were in life. So kind of getting at a kind of continuity or consistency between those things. And I really like that it's the duty of the followers of Renewal to guide others in embracing death. It reminds me of death doula work, where the idea is not to fight death, but to find acceptance, probably integration, meaning in relating with the facts and contours, maybe, of our awareness of our mortality. And then really like this part in the following Renewal Part 2, where it talks about we must explore and uncover the mysteries of the world, but to not reveal secrets that would cause harm to others. And I think that, similarly from a perspective on end-of-life doula work, I think seeking and finding the mysteries of life is a really meaningful endeavor, but I like how this section acknowledges kind of that they're like very personal, something we should personally hold, and maybe sometimes it makes sense to share them with others. But in end-of-life doula work, there's a lot of withholding of oneself to provide space for the other. And I feel like that this section is getting at that sort of ethic. And then this contrast between Ralos and Renault and the followers, the confidence and decisiveness that comes with recklessness and impulsivity of Ralos followers, and then Renault's followers, where they say they play the other side of the coin and question their reason and direction for their actions, so as to predict and prevent the consequences of them. I mean, as a Libra, I really like this. Now, interestingly, both my sun and moon signs are in Leo, and so that's like, but I mean, thinking in terms of the solar system, I mean, the moon gets its light from the sun, so I think in that sense, it's interesting, to consider how both my sun and moon signs. Did I say sun and moon? I meant moon and rising. So in that sense, it's interesting that my moon sign is like very sunny. It's Leo, and I kind of like thinking of it as like, a reflection, the moon reflecting the sun. But in that, gets to be a very different dynamic, because in following Renault Part 2, it says Renault brings light to the darkness. At the very beginning of the book, it says, from the dark of the night, with the absence of light, Renault came into being. And then at the very end, it says Renault brings light to the darkness. And so Renault isn't just darkness. Renault is this light shining in the darkness. But anyway, I think what I'm trying to express is how the religion here of followers of Renault seems very aware of the existence of Ralos religion and understands itself in contrast to it, and it's sort of a balancing force. And so as a Libra, I like that, because both of these parts can come together to contrast and complement each other, and hopefully provide a world that's richer and able to serve a broader range of needs. So that is the 3 books. Now I think it's time to go to the Arceus library and turn them in. So let's see, how do I get there? I'll get back with you when I'm there. Okay, so I made it to the library and I'm about to talk to Lugosia, and we'll see what they say. Shh. It's what Lugosia says, and I say, maybe I just use the, because it looks like just generic library dialogue, so maybe I have to use the tomes on Lugosia. Yep, I show Lugosia the temple tome. Lugosia says, I've not seen this before. Your donation is appreciated. And I say, hey, you can have these tomes, which I discovered as well. And then I hand the sun and moon tomes over. Lugosia says, your contributions have been noticed. We would like to reward you for your assistance. I get an XP lamp, and that is the end of the mini-quest. If you find any spare pages for these books, I'd be willing to give you 1,000 gold for each one. Duplicate sources of information are always useful. Okay, so that's just a game mechanism, but I say I'll keep an eye out. And Lugosia says, enough talk now. Shh. And I think with that, it is a perfect segue into saying goodnight for now. And thanks so much for listening to this inaugural prototype episode. Bye now.